we have two more sessions. First session is going to focus on gender, then we will go to agri-entrepreneurship. But before we get started with gender, I just wanted to reflect on how important the collaboration has been over the years with the gender team and the ALP team, wider, smaller supply chain team. The work on gender is absolutely critical. We've been talking about scale and innovations for scaling through partnerships with external partners and integrating more in the World Bank projects. But really, when we talk about the quality, the impact, and really making the changes in the behavior changes in particular, that's where the partnership and support that we've received from working with a gender team has been so important. Just want to start off by saying thank you to all of our colleagues on that team for all the support and how much we've learned from you. And I'd like to turn it over to Maura, who will introduce herself, and also our colleague Lydia. Maura, over to you.
Thanks, Heather. And I couldn't agree more about the collaboration, and you'll hear a lot about it in this presentation. My name is Maura Schwartz. I am a global short-term consultant with IFC's ALP team. And I do work closely with the Mass Gender team to incorporate gender and youth content into our training and coaching. I will turn the mic over to our colleague Lydia on the gender team, and she'll introduce herself, any of the other gender team members who are with us today in the audience, and then take us into this presentation. Lydia?
Thank you very much, Maura, and hello, everyone. I'm Lydia, dialing in from Lagos, Nigeria. I want us to go into the Slido poll. So we're going to just show very quickly, put one question for you to answer, and we'll give 4 options that you can choose from. I'll give you a hint. Real transformation isn't just about giving access, it's about rethinking how the system is built. That's my hint. So I hope everybody has gotten a chance to pick what do you think is a correct answer?
70% selected A and 30% selected B. None selected C or D.
Okay. Well done, team. The correct answer is A. Why? Because designing with rural women through co-creation, testing, and feedback ensures digital tools and supply chain services that actually match the needs of women, their realities and constraints. It's about flipping the script from inclusion as an afterthought to inclusion as a design principle. Let me start with a story about the truck that didn't stop. Every week, a truck drove through farming communities to collect produce for one of IFC's agribusiness clients. It stopped at every aggregator's collection point except one village. The women there waited week after week. Their harvest was ready, their storage sheds were full, but the truck never came. When the client asked why, the logistics team said, no one from that village is on the aggregators list. It turned out that all the aggregators were men, and none had registered the women producers, even though those women were contributing nearly 40% of the total volume through informal routes. The result? Trucks returned half empty, fuel was wasted, and women farmers were invisible in the company's data system. When the company applied the Gender in ALP guidance note, which is showing up on your screen now, they remapped the value chain, they trained women aggregators, and adjusted collection schedules. Within one season, truck utilization improved by 35%, repayment rates went up, and women-led groups became some of the most reliable suppliers. The problem was never the truck. The problem was a system that wasn't designed to see everyone it should have served. But beyond women, the same invisibility affects others. Young people who lack a voice in farmer groups, ethnic minorities who are farming on marginal land, people with disabilities who are rarely counted in training lists. The system that should empower everyone ends up amplifying exclusion, often unintentionally. And that's exactly the purpose of the Gender in ALP Guidance Note, to help our clients identify where women and other often overlooked groups are missing in the aggregator model, and how to redesign models, redesign roles, incentives, and leadership structures to make the system more inclusive and more efficient. Now, if the track that didn't stop reminds us that inclusion starts with visibility, the next slide reminds us that even when we do see women, we can still leave them behind in another way, digitally. Because as more of our agribusiness clients adopt e-extension, mobile payments, and digital data collection, a new kind of exclusion is quietly emerging. That's why today we're launching the new Gender Digital Divide Guidance Note under ALP. This note is designed to help IFC teams and clients and other people working with smallholder farmers understand and bridge the gender gaps that can appear as agribusinesses digitize their operations. The guidance note walks you through from concept note and pre-implementation to training, design, and delivery. Let's be clear. Digitization isn't automatically inclusive. In sub-Saharan Africa, women are still 20 to 50% less likely to use mobile internet than men. Many share phones or rely on accounts registered in someone else's name. They're less likely to be targeted for digital training and more likely to be excluded from data systems that drive decision-making. So when a company digitizes payments or moves training online, it can unintentionally scale exclusion, not inclusion. And that's why this guidance note matters. It helps users, especially those who are client-facing, diagnose where the gender-digital divide exists in a supply chain, design interventions that build women's digital confidence and agency, not just access, and track progress with gender-smart indicators that link digital inclusion to business value, things like efficiency, loyalty, and traceability. In short, it helps us to make sure that when we go digital, no one gets left behind. Because digital tools don't close gender gaps on their own. We do when we design intentionally. The Gender in ALP Guidance Note helps us see who's missing from the track. The Gender Digital Divide Guidance Note helps us make sure that once everyone's on board, they can actually move forward together. So as we launch this new note today, I invite all of us to ask one question in every project that you design. Who's not yet on the list? And how can we design with them, not just for them? Thank you very much. Back to you, Maura.
Thanks, Lydia. Some of you have heard about this Cargill's project that really launched a lot of the work ALP has developed for the gender inclusion in our projects. But I'd like to share some brief background about it and some really impressive results and how we've used this as a launching point for many other projects that have engaged rural women and farmers. So, to address some of the challenges faced by cocoa communities, Cargill partnered with IFC, Agribusiness Leadership Program, to promote women's entrepreneurship across its supply chain. In 2019, ALP built upon our Farming as a Business content for a very low literacy audience. As part of this collaboration, women's groups associated with Cargill's cacao cooperatives in Côte d'Ivoire received entrepreneurship and leadership training. This empowered them to establish and expand existing businesses to supplement cacao production. ALP worked very closely with Cargill's sustainability team and the third-party training and coaching firm Cargill hired to develop and deliver content. What's really important is we learned many lessons over the 3-year life cycle of this project, and we revised and improved the content and the delivery based on feedback from the trainers and coaches and the participants. At the same time, ALP was supporting the cacao cooperatives in providing tailored training and coaching to the leaders, and this was part of Cooperative Academy. This included a training on gender awareness to strengthen the cooperative capacity to foster women's economic empowerment within these cacao growing communities. As mentioned, this was a 3-year project. We reached 2,029 women group members and 687 women's group leaders. Some of the women's groups were also Village Savings and Loan Associations, or VSLAs. This was a separate yet parallel capacity building program that Cargill had been implementing with CARE International. Some of these results now, because the results were impressive. At the beginning of the program, 13% of the women had income under extreme poverty, and only 29% reported that their income generating activities, or IGAs, actually earned income. By the end of the 3-year program, 77% of the women had increased their monthly household income levels above the extreme poverty line, as defined by the World Bank. 271 women established 459 new income-generating activities, and interestingly, of this, 71%, or 192, are VSLA members. There is a very tight correlation between the success of starting a new business and having access to the resources through the VSLAs. Of our training, the top most useful topics that the women told us were sales and marketing and financial management. And as an example, one of the women, Akusa Poli, experienced a significant improvement to her monthly income, and she underwent a transformative learning journey as she gained knowledge about many entrepreneurial skills, business skills, and the opportunities in which she never thought she could participate. The opportunities included the sale of agricultural products. In fact, 80% of these income generating activities were in agriculture or farming. A key one was converting cassava into acheque, a staple food, and this is a value adding business. Others were retailing of food and drink, providing services like hairdressing and transportation, and other homemade products such as soap, honey, and charcoal. This had a very positive impact on addressing 2 key barriers that Lydia mentioned and that we've heard before. One is insufficient savings, and the other was a lack of awareness of financial institutions they could tap into. As you can see from this slide, the training content that was developed for Cargill was actually used for several other ALP projects around the world. The first, Olam Seco, in the cotton sector. And if you see WGL, that's Women's Group Leader. WGM is Women's Group Member. It was also used in Haiti on a horticulture project. Women's-led cooperatives producing staple foods in Côte d'Ivoire with a real emphasis on linkage to markets, and several of those women's groups actually got very large contracts with off-takers serving the Abidjan market. Sukden, another cacao purchasing client of IFC, and it's putting a lot of emphasis on work with the VSLAs. With the joint World Bank project, the WEFI funded program in the Gambia, we trained cooperative and SME leaders, mostly women. You will hear after this presentation about Gaia, which is the Global Agri-Entrepreneur Academy and the work it's doing to help build training and capacity of women and youth. And then I have a blank up here about other projects. So in the chat, if you have other projects, whether IFC or AMEA, where you have used some of this training material, would you please put it in there so we have a record of how much further this has gone. Lydia and I have questions for you, and we would like your responses. I think we may have a little bit of time, a couple minutes. If anyone has something and we can go off mute, you could raise your hand, but we'd like you to also type your questions or comments into the chat. In what ways has gender inclusion been successful in your ALP or other projects? The second question, what would you have or are doing differently to include gender and youth in your projects? In other words, capitalize on lessons learned. And 3, as you saw, we have these 2 new guidance notes. What are some other tools that are still needed? What's missing? And the reason we ask these questions is your responses will be considered as our ALP team looks towards our strategic plan for the coming year. So if anybody has any questions for Lydia or myself, have comments, we're here for another couple minutes.
And I think in addition to the last question about what gender tools are still needed, if your organization has a cool gender tool that you think we could benefit from, that can work well in the context of our work, please share it with us in the chat box. Thank you.
Okay, I did see a comment about trying to access the guidance notes, and we'll take care of that. We'll get you the links. And I see Heather's back on, so really, please put any comments, responses in the chat. We will address them and try to respond back to you. Thank you, Lydia, and thanks all of you.
Thank you, Maura. Thank you, Lydia. I wanted to really reflect on what Anoop was saying at the start of our time together today, and the importance of really addressing some of the key constraints that women face in agriculture is going to be a key component of support to AgriConnect. And I think that these themes and considerations that Maura and Lydia are talking about today, we'll certainly revisit those and think about them as we are integrating and supporting AgriConnect.